Hello. Industry is part of the story of Wales. From the mid-1700s, it transformed the economy and landscape of Wales, with Wales at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. By the 1851 census, Wales was the first country to count more people employed in industry than in agriculture. The importance and impact of Welsh industry on the world is represented by the fact that 3 of the 4 World Heritage Sites in Wales relate to industry. This Royal Commission aerial image showcases one of them, part of Wales's newest World Heritage Site, the slate landscape of North West Wales, inscribed this summer. Blaenavon Industrial Landscape is another World Heritage Site, inscribed in 2000, and telling the story of the iron and coal industry that was preeminent in South Wales in the 1800s. And Ponc Salte Aqueduct and Canal, inscribed in 2009 as a feat of civil engineering of the Industrial Revolution. It was completed in the early years of the 1800s. Industry transformed the landscape of Wales. From the quarry and mining of raw materials such as non-ferrous metals like lead, copper or silver, and here Paris Mountain on Anglesey is a particularly striking example. Stone such as slate, which provided the roofing material that shaped the design of buildings and drove the Industrial Revolution all over the world. And coal from the South Wales coalfield. It resulted in an international trade. One use was to fuel transport steam coal for railways and ships. Coal was also an essential fuel for smelting. It fueled the industrial scale smelting of copper, which from the 1700s came to be centred around Swansea. By the early 1800s, 90% of Britain's copper smelting capacity was located within 20 miles of Swansea. And here, one industrial gem of Copperopolis, as the area became known, is the engine house and engine of the Havard Copper Works, a focus of record and research by the Royal Commission. Improved transport systems were needed to convey raw materials and finished products. Railways, initially horse-drawn, later steam-powered, and canals were built. These were the arteries and capillaries of the Industrial Revolution, snaking their way across the landscape of Wales. Wales's industry also flourished due to the relative proximity of the sea, providing access to world markets. Ports and harbours developed on a grand scale, such as Port Penrhyn on the Menai Strait, which served Penrhyn Slate Quarry. From the boom years of the 1700s and 1800s came the decline during the 1900s, the result of economic depression, increased foreign competition, and changing ways of life and governance. So, that brief introduction was illustrated with some of the wonderful images and documents from the collections of the Royal Commission Archive, the National Monuments Record of Wales. I want to explore more snapshots from our archive, which has documented the rise and fall of industry across Wales. This will also showcase external collections, but also those generated internally through the work of many past and present Royal Commission investigators. The large expanse of industrial landscapes means they're often best viewed from the air. Here, the NMR's Aerial Photographic Archive comes into its own. It is the largest collection in Wales, spanning the early 1900s onwards. As an example, I want to focus on the wonderful Aerofilms collection, a unique aerial photographic archive of international importance. The collection includes 1.26 million negatives and more than 2,000 photograph albums. The NMR holds the Welsh contingent of this collection. The photographs date from 1919 to 2006, and the total collection presents an unparalleled picture of the changing face of Britain in the 20th century. This Aerofilms image shows the Dulwich Ironworks in Merthyr Tydfil in 1929. In the 1800s, this was the largest ironworks in the world. The image captures the works at the end of their life. Production ceased in 1930, following which the site was largely demolished. It therefore captures a hugely important part of Wales's industrial history. All that survives today is the blast engine house of 1909, shown here on a Royal Commission oblique aerial image of 1990. Having the aerofilms and other aerial collections, for example those from the Ordnance Survey and those taken by Royal Commission aerial investigators, mean that in some cases we are able to chart the rise of an industry and its development and change. For example, the development of the Port Talbot Steelworks. This aerofilms image of 1929 shows Baldwin's Iron and Steelworks, which closed in 1953 due to the development of Abbey Steelworks, shown here under construction in 1949. More recently, this is the site in 2012, now known as Tatterstill. Moving on, a superb collection in the NMR showing the construction of a major civil engineering scheme are the contemporary photographs of the Elan Valley Water Scheme, built to supply water to the city of Birmingham and opened by King Edward VII in 1904. The photographs from the Edward Hubbard collection document the building of the dams, tunnels, aqueduct and construction railway. They are also wonderful in showcasing the people behind it, the engineers and the workforce. From the rise to the fall of industry, and here I want to showcase two collections which through photography were able to document buildings and features prior to their demolition. The first relates to railways and their decline in the post-war years. At the time, many railway enthusiasts set about recording the infrastructure before it vanished. One of the largest collections assembled was that of the Reverend H.D.E. Rokeby of Norfolk, and the NMR holds a Welsh section of this collection. Over 1,500 photographs of stations, halts and other installations taken mainly in the late 1950s and early 1960s. This image shows Coquet Railway Station in Swansea, taken by Reverend Rokeby on the 3rd of May 1961. It was subsequently demolished. The collapse of the coal industry in the 1990s was documented by John Cornwell. His collection in the NMR includes photographs of underground and surface features, over 600 images from collieries in South Wales. Our own team of Royal Commission investigators also undertake emergency recording prior and after closure and often before demolition. This is the Dunlop Semtex factory in Bryn Mawr, which manufactured rubberized flooring. It was recorded from the ground in 1999 and from the air in 2001 on the eve of its demolition. The factory was built between 1945 and 1951 and was the first post-1939 building in Wales to be listed and was given a 2-star grading in recognition of its outstanding importance. The 9 concrete shell domes shown on this image were, at the time of construction, the largest in the world. And Anglesey Aluminium Smelting Works opened in 1971 and recorded by us on closure in 2012. Through images we recorded the whole process, from the arrival of raw materials at Salt Island Jetty, their transfer by conveyor belt under Holyhead Harbour to the main smelting works some 3 kilometres away. So far, I've showcased our collections that provide a visual record of industry, the buildings and features that make up these landscapes. What I want to now provide a snapshot of are the collections we hold that give the additional understanding, explain what function now destroyed or derelict and empty buildings held, and how individual buildings and structures on a site fitted into the overall process and process flow of that industry. This example is of the Tathmertha Colliery. In 1992, the Commission decided to make a comprehensive record of this colliery in response to the collapse of the coal industry. Photography and recording of the operation was undertaken, resulting in this wonderful interpretive drawing. This aspect of process recording is something that Royal Commission investigators have championed over the years, and the results can be seen in a number of our site records. Working with owners and managers, we've been lucky enough to take in their information and add our own, as this diagram shows. This is the starting point from which we can produce our interpretive drawings. Many interpretive drawings and reconstructions have been produced over the years by the talented illustrators that once formed part of the Royal Commission Drawing Office and are today in the drawings collection of the NMR. This example is a reconstruction drawing of Growan Depot, a goods yard on the Brecon Forest tram roads, and which featured in our 1990 publication on the subject, written by Royal Commission industrial archaeologist Stephen Hughes. This process has continued through to today, but in a slightly different way, these days using computer graphics. All combined to provide a greater understanding of Wales's industrial monuments. This example shown here is Pont Cysylltu Aqueduct, surveyed by Royal Commission investigators as part of the World Heritage nomination in 2008. The result of the survey was a series of three-dimensional cutaways produced in AutoCAD and 3D Studio Max, showing the construction of the aqueduct and how all the elements fitted together. This in turn has led to the new generation of reconstruction, that of animation. From the 3D models of Pont Cysylltu shown in the previous slide, we animated the process, and these are some stills from the animation which shows how both the piers and trough were brought to site and assembled. Reconstruction and animation works particularly well for industrial sites. It replaces machinery in buildings, water wheels in wheel pits, shows them working, and also presents the process and operation of all construction technique. Our archive and YouTube channel details a number of sites given the Royal Commission animation treatment. Industrial sites include a slate quarry, copper works, metal mine, and a hydroelectric power station. Do take a look. And finally, I'm going to finish with one final collection covering a different medium, the wonderful paintings and drawings of Falcon Hildred. Since the 1950s, Falcon has been making a record of urban and industrial buildings and landscapes. He lives in Blaenau Ffestiniog, and the slate landscape here has become a principal focus of his work. For example, Holland Level in the Oakley Slate Quarry, shown here. Safekeeping of his important work and collection was made possible in 2011 by a partnership between the Royal Commission and Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust, with a grant from the HLF and support from the artist himself. As a result, a collection of over 600 drawings were obtained by the NMR, which visitors can consult in person or view online. Falcon also wonderfully illustrates how industry changed the settlement pattern of Wales, something I've not covered in this brief snapshot. Communities sprang up to house workmen and their families with features such as terraced housing, chapels, working men's clubs and institutions, shops and public houses, reflecting a new way of life. Thank you for listening.